So today I just want to review for our upcoming linear equations test so you can show mastery and everyone earn their hundreds. So this first part, I'm hoping that you have your formula chart in front of you. You will for the test. But just to identify the slope-intercept form, point-slope form, and standard form. Remember, you do not need to memorize these equations. I know some of you already have these down because we use them so often, but they are on our star chart. I just want you to be familiar with where to find them, okay? What you do want to just be mindful of is make sure that we know that in slope-intercept form, we know that m, well, that's our slope, and your b, that is your y-intercept. And then if we move over to our point-slope form, well, we see our m here again. Oops. And that is also our slope. Remember, in point-slope form, our m is going to be on the outside of the parentheses. And then in here, you will have an x1 and a y1. Remember, these represent a point and lots of points on the line. Okay. Remember, what I told you to be mindful of here is that these subtraction signs are part of the equation. Okay, so do not forget that those subtraction signs are part of the equation. And then we'll go over into standard form. It's our ax plus by equals c. Two things that we have to remember here. Remember, a, b, and c, they are integers, okay? So just frankly, no decimals, no fractions in a, b, and c. The other thing is a has to be positive, okay? Has to be positive. So on our next section, we need to identify the slope and y-intercept for each equation below. So looking at them, they are all in slope-intercept form. Well, here's our slope-intercept, y equals mx plus b. We know our slope is attached to our x. So that is going to be 2 for the slope in this equation. And then for our y-intercept, our b, it is -6. Remember, always take the sign that is in front, okay? For our next one, we have our slope of 1/3, our y-intercept of 4. Okay, it's positive. We do not need to write that positive symbol. And for our last, our slope, do not put 0. Our slope is not 0. What is that number in between that negative sign and the x? Well, it's a 1. Take that negative with it. So it's a -1. And our y-intercept is -5. So moving on with the point, identifying the point and the slope for each of the other equations, we are now looking at point-slope form. Okay, so if we just take a look at what our point-slope form is up here, well, we know that our slope, our m, is on the outside of the parentheses. Okay. So on this first one, our slope is 4. Now with our points, and just be mindful that that subtraction sign is part of the equation. So if I go up, I'm just gonna, once again, I'm looking at my star chart, looking at the formula. My x, well, that subtraction is part of the equation, so my x really is going to be 1, and my y is going to be 3. Okay. Looking at my next one, same thing, my slope on the outside of my parentheses, I have -1/2. And then my x value, that subtraction is part of the equation, is 3. But look at my y value. I have y plus 6. Well, in order to get a +6, I needed a -6 in my y, right? Because if I put it into my equation, y minus -6 turns into a positive. So remember, a quick rule of thumb is that when we're pulling points out of these equations, the signs are always going to be the opposite of what is in the format. Okay. And now our last one is on the outside of our parentheses. We have 1/7. And then I have, for my x, a -2 because I have a +2 in the equation, and a -4. So on this next, we're asked to identify the intercepts of the equations below. So we want to find the x and the y intercepts. Remember, standard form is really great because it's easy to find that x and y intercepts. I highly recommend that if you get them into standard form, you use that cover up method. So we already know that for x-intercept, our y value is 0. So if I was to plug in a 0 here, okay, 3 times 0 is 0, it goes away. So what I do instead is I just cover it up, okay, pretend it's not there. So now I'm left with 2x equals 6, and I'm solving for x. So I have an x-intercept of 3. Or you can, if you want, just think about it of 2 times what is 6? Well, that's going to be my 3. And to find my y-intercept, well, I'm just going to do the opposite. I'm going to cover up my x. Okay, pretend that your x just is not there. So I'm left with 3y equals 6. And so here 3y equals 6. 3 times what equals 6? We're solving for y. So I have a y-intercept of 2. And I'm able to do that in this format because we know that for my x-intercept, y is always a value of 0. For my y-intercept, x is always a value of 0. Okay. So now let's look at our next, and I'm simply just going to use my cover up method. So if I cover up this 5y, I'm just left with x equals 10. Now, wasn't that easy because that, in fact, is my x-intercept. And now I'll do the same for to find my y-intercept. I'm going to cover up that x. I'm left with 5y equals 10. So now I'm going to have 5y equals 10, and 10 divided by 5 is 2. So you should have a y-intercept of 2. So let's take a look at some questions. So on question number 1, I have a table, and it's asking me which function represents the same relationship. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just go ahead and look at my answer choices. What I notice about my answer choices is that they are all in that point slope form, okay? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find my slope, because I can already see that my answer choices are either going to have a slope of -1/3 or a slope of -3. So at least if I find my slope, I can eliminate 2 of those choices, okay? So to find my slope, I'm going to choose 2 points. I'm just going to use these 2 right here. And then I'm going to label my points. I have my x1, y1, x2, y2. And I'm going to plug them into my slope formula. Now remember, this formula is also on your star chart. So let's see. So I have my y2, which is 0, minus my y1, which is 12, over my x2, -3.5, minus my x1, which is -7.5. Notice I'm putting these in parentheses because on my x's, I do not want to lose that negative. Okay. So I have 0 minus 12. Well, that leaves me with -12. And then -3.5 minus -7.5. So we should know that 2 negatives, that is going to turn that into a positive. So I have basically 7.5 minus 3.5, and that is 4. Okay. And then -12 divided by 4 gives me a slope of -3. Okay. Remember, you do not do this mentally, you just put this into Desmos. So looking at my answer choices, I already know that A is not going to be it because the slope is wrong, and C is not going to be it, also because the slope is wrong. Okay. Now, I'll look at my equations again, and I'll say, okay, if it's in point slope, well then I know that there's 2 points. I have a point here and a point here. Now you have to be very mindful, okay, because this is going to be my x in the red and my y is going to be in the yellow, and be mindful that that subtraction sign is part of the equation, okay, meaning that our x and our y, when we write them, we pull them out, their signs are going to be opposite. So in my equation, my x is -2. So when I pull it out, it's going to be +2. And my y is +16.5. So when I pull that out, it's going to be -16.5. So now if I look at my chart, do I have a point that has an x of +2, a y of -16.5? Well, I do. So right now, B looks good. And let's just test D, because we never know. It could be more than one answer, so we never just want to give up. Check all your answers. Okay, so here I have an x value. This is my x, and I do have a y value. Hopefully you know that y is 0. So when I pull them out, I already know my y value is 0, and my x value is going to be a positive 3.5, because remember, it's opposite. So now looking at my table, do I have a positive 3.5 x and a y value of 0? Well, it's close, but this is negative, so that's not going to work. And in this last one, I have a 3.5 and a -21, so this is not it. And my only answer choice is B. Okay. Now, number 2, now that we found our answer, we need to convert this to slope-intercept form. So let me write, here is y plus 16.5 equals -3, x minus 2. Okay. First, look at your star chart. Notice, what does it want us to convert it into? Slope-intercept form. So I need to get it into y equals mx plus b. So I have to solve for y. Y needs to be all by itself. Okay? So the first thing is to just follow your rules of equation. I'm going to distribute first. Okay? I'm going to get rid of those parentheses. So -3 times x, I have -3x. -3 times -2, I have +6. Once again, please put this into Desmos. Okay, I'm not doing anything yet with the left side of my equation, so I have y plus 16.5. Oh, and I forgot, a lot of you like to use that wall, so we'll draw that wall so we know we have two sides of the equation. Well, now I want y by itself. I need to get rid of that 16.5 on the left. So what do I need to do to make this 0? Because that's how I'm going to make it go away. Well, I'm going to subtract 16.5. And what I do to one side, I do to the other. And I'm going to line this up underneath the 6. Okay. I'm not going to line it up. They're not like terms with the x, so I cannot subtract that. And then from here, I'll just bring it down. So I'm bringing my y down. And then 16.5 minus 16.5, that is 0. Here is my equal. Nothing with that -3x, so that is simply going to be brought down. And then for last, I have a +6 minus a 16.5. So you're going to go into your Desmos. Please don't try to do it mentally. I know a lot of you can, but let's just be 100% sure. So we have 16 minus 16.5, and you should get a -10.5. Okay. So now when I look at this, check your format. Am I in slope-intercept form? Do I have y equals mx plus b? I do. I have a slope of -3 and a y-intercept of 10.5. Let's look at the next one. Well, the next one is almost very similar to what we were just working on, except now they are giving us a graph and they're asking for us to write it in slope-intercept form and standard form. Graphs are always easier to start the equation in writing in slope-intercept form, because slope-intercept form, I just need two things from my graph. I need my slope and I need my y-intercept. Okay. Well, looking at my graph, I'm going to start with my y-intercept. I see it's where it crosses my y-axis. I have a y-intercept of -3. Now I just need to find my slope. So I'm going to choose my two exact points. I'm going to use my y-intercept, -3. And then I'm going to use my 0. Remember, 0 is another name for x-intercept. I'm going to use my 0 of 4, and I'm going to draw my slope triangle. So I know my slope is my change of y over change of x. So my change of y, I'm going up 1, 2, 3. And my change of x, I'm going over 1, 2, 3, 4. So I have a slope of 3 over 4, positive. And looking at my graph, I do in fact have a graph that is positive. So when I write this into slope-intercept form, I have y equals 3 over 4x minus 3. Okay, so the first part of this question is done. Now I need to write this in standard form, convert this or manipulate this into standard form. Looking at my star chart again, I know standard form is ax plus by equals c. Okay, so coming down here, I need to have my x and my y on the same side of the equation. So manipulating again, I'm going to subtract 3/4 x from both sides. When I do that, I'm left with negative 3/4 x plus y equals negative 3. Now, before you go, take a look at the equation and ask yourself, is this in standard form? Well, you're correct. X and y are on the same side of the equation, and my constant is on the other, but there are two things wrong with it. Remember, in standard form, I cannot have any fractions, okay? And unfortunately, right here, I have a fraction. The other thing is I cannot have my a value a negative, okay? So, and I, in fact, have my a value a negative. So I need to get rid of the fraction and the negative. So I'm going to do this in just one step. I'm going to combine both of these steps just into one. So how I get rid of a fraction is I'm going to multiply the entire equation by the denominator. So I'm going to multiply that by 4. Okay. And at the same time, because I want to get rid of the negative, I'm going to multiply it by a negative 4. Okay? Because we know when I distribute this negative 4, negative times a negative is a positive. So now I want you to distribute it to everything, the entire equation. So I have negative 4 times negative 3/4, and that leaves me with positive 3x. And then negative 4 times positive y, which is negative 4y. And then negative 4 times negative 3, which is positive 12. And now my equation is in standard form. I have ax plus by equals c. My a, b, and c are all integers. My a is not negative, and it's okay that my b is. It's just my a cannot be negative. So let's take a look at number 4, and oh, your favorite application. So let's see. Remember, applications, let's take a look and let's see what information are we being told. Okay, well, we're dealing with ice shelf, glacier. Okay, what do I know? I know it had a thickness of 450 millimeters when it was first discovered. Look at that keyword first. All right, that's a keyword there. And then what else do I know? I know that it's decreasing, okay, at a rate of 0.6 meters per day. Okay, so there's a couple of keywords that we have in here. We know that decreasing means, of course, negative, and a rate of 0.6 meters per day. That term per, that is slope. So right now we know we have a negative slope. Okay. And what else do we know? We know that the glacier had a thickness of 450 meters when it was first discovered. So remember, beginning, initial, start. What did the thickness start at? 450. That is our y-intercept. That is our b. Well, I can easily write this in slope-intercept form because I have an M and I have a B. So I have y equals, and my slope, I have 0.6 per day, but it also tells me it's decreasing. So I need that negative. And then at thickness of 450, that's my B, plus B, okay? So here it is in slope-intercept form. So let's take a look at our answer choices, okay? And my first one here, well, it's almost right, except my slope is positive, so A is not correct, okay? And then let's say B, well, B is in point slope form. So even if you wanted to convert it into slope-intercept form and you can distribute, the slope would be good, but not your y-intercept. So B is not correct. C, y equals 450 minus 0.6x. Well, I have a negative slope. I have a y-intercept of 450. Well, that one looks good. And let's just check number D, or letter D. Same thing, if I were to distribute, I would have a positive slope. I'm not even going to go any further because I need a negative slope. We know that D is not correct. Okay, number 5. So number 5, they gave us a graph, but on this graph, they only gave us 2 points. It's okay, you got this. And they want us to write an equation in slope-intercept form that passes through the 2 points on the graph. So remember, slope-intercept form is that y equals mx plus b. So to put it into that form, I need a slope and I need a y-intercept. Now, I'm going to warn you, do not just think you could go, well, I'm going to connect these points and where is my y-intercept, and you're going to take a guess and I don't know. No, let's not do it that way, okay? Let's solve this mathematically. Well, I have 2 points, so what can I find from 2 points? I can find slope, okay? So from here, let's take a look. The ordered pair of this point is I have an x value as -2, y value of +7. Here I have an x value of 4, y value of -2. And I'm just going to plug this into my slope formula. Okay, so you can label these points. I'll start just x1, y1, x2, y2. And in my slope formula, I have y2, which is -2, minus y1, 7, over my x2, which is 4, minus my x1, which is -2. And now I'm going to simplify. -2 minus 7 is -9. And then 4 minus -2, remember, 2 negative turns that into a positive, so that's going to be 6. And then this can be reduced, okay? Remember, always simplify. So I have a slope of -3/2. Now let's take a look at my answer choices. Well, I only have one that has a -3/2. I don't even have to go that extra step and find that y-intercept, okay? And that is just how, remember, if you have 2 points, you can find the slope. And then just do a process of elimination. Okay, number 6, they want us to write an equation in standard form that passes through the point for -2 and has a slope of 3/2. Well, what do we have here? Well, let's identify. We have a slope and we have a point. Well, if I have a slope and a point, the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to put this into slope point form. So remember up here, slope point form is my y minus y1 equals mx minus x1. So now I'm just going to substitute in. I have y minus my y1. Well, you notice here our y1 is -2 equals my slope 3/2 x minus x1, which is 4, okay? Well, I want to clean it up a little bit. Remember, I have 2 negatives here, and I can turn those 2 negatives. That would be a positive, right? Because both of these, right, can we just agree to negatives? That's going to be a positive. I just want to clean this up right in here. I just don't want to look at it. We have a very limited space, so I just want to make sure that get that in. So I have y plus 2. Okay, so now I am in point slope form. Now I have to convert this to standard form. Well, let's just solve. Okay, so the first thing is I'm going to go ahead and distribute. I'm going to distribute that 3/2 to everything in the parentheses. So I have 3 over 2x, and then 3 over 2 times -4. Okay, putting that into Desmos, I have -6. And bringing down the y plus 2. So now just under standard form, I have to have that ax plus by equals c. So now I'm going to subtract my -3/2 x to both sides. And I'm sorry, number 7, I'm going into your space. So I have -3/2 x plus y plus 2 equals -6. And the last thing is I need to get rid of that 2. So I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. -3/2 x plus y equals -8. Okay, can't go anywhere yet because I'm still not into standard form. And I know this because I have a fraction and I have a negative. So I'm going to take and I'm going to multiply it by the denominator, which is 2. And because I have a negative, I'm going to multiply it by a -2. Because when I distribute that to my a value, a negative times a negative is positive. And when I do so, sorry, number 8, we're just going to bring it down here. I have -2 times -3/2 is positive 3x. And then -2 times a positive y is -2y. And -2 times -8 is positive 16. So now I am in standard form. So I had to pause the video there just to go ahead and erase all that we had in 7 and 8. So number 7, true or false? Okay, hey, we got a 50-50 chance. A line that passes through the points 1, -4, and 6, 8 has a slope of 5/12. Look, this is just another way of asking us of what is the slope from these 2 points. Okay, so label them. I have an x1, y1, x2, y2, and put them into my slope formula. I have x minus -4 over 6 minus 1. Okay, so 8 minus -4, plug it into Desmos. I know I'm left with positive 12. And 6 minus 1 is 5. So with these points, I have a slope of 12/5. So true or false, is 12/5 the same as 5/12? It's not, so this is false. Now let's take a look at number 8. Another application problem. So we have a customer who will spend $100 at most to order uniforms. That word at most, before I even go any further, already tells me that we're going to be looking at some sort of inequality. So shirts cost $20 per player. Shoes cost $45. And right there it is, right in inequality to determine the possible combinations of X shirts and Y shoes. Okay. Well, in here, they have already detailed for us what the variables represent. We always want to identify our variables. So I know that my X is going to be my shirts and my Y is going to be my shoes. Well, what do I know about my shirts? I know that a shirt costs $20 per player. So how would I write that in a variable? Well, that would be 20x. Okay. And then let's see, what do I know about my Y? My shoes cost $45 per player. How would I write that in a variable? I would write that as 45y. And the last bit of information I know is that we are going to spend at most $100. So they could spend $100, or they could spend less, but we already know they're not going to spend $100 in a penny. Okay, so that's where this inequality comes in. So let's put it all together. We know we have our x, our 20x, okay, plus our 45y, and we're not spending more than 100, okay? So we know 20x plus 45y is less than or equal to, and I'm using that equal to because they could spend $100, okay, to 100. And there is our equation. Okay, here is the last one. We're writing an equivalent equation for t equals hr plus 3z when solved for z. So a literal equation, okay? Remember, these are simply just solving equations, except we've taken out a majority of the numbers. You got this, okay? Still follow your steps. Remember that don't call me after midnight. So the first thing, do I have anything to distribute? Well, I don't because there's no parentheses. The next, combine like terms. Nope, nothing on the left side to combine, nothing on the right side. Okay. The next one, move the variable. Well, yeah, I'm going to treat this HR as a variable that I need to move over because remember, I'm solving for Z. I want Z by itself. So I'm going to subtract HR from both sides. And when I do that, I have T minus HR, because I'm not combining them, they're not like terms, equals 3 over Z. Okay. Here, add and subtract. Nope, there's nothing. I cannot do any, I can't add that 3 or subtract that 3 because it's attached to that Z. So this is where it's going to come in on that last step, that multiply divide. Since I want 3z, I want to break them apart. I want z by itself. I'm going to divide by 3. And what we do to one side, we do to the other. So we want to divide the entire side by 3. And that leaves me with t minus hr over 3 equals z. And there we go. Did we solve it for z? Yes, z is all by itself. And then we have t minus hr over 3 on the left-hand side. I hope this review was helpful, and I have the utmost confidence for you on your test.